It was supposed to be the happiest night of their lives. The city of Paris, glittering with promise, stretched out beneath the hotel's grand windows. But inside Suite 714, the air was thick with something far colder than romance. The clock had just struck midnight when a scream shattered the silence. A sound so raw, so desperate. It seemed to echo down the marble corridors and out into the night. Moments later, a man's voice, trembling and broken, crackled through the emergency line. "Please, you have to help me. My wife, she's not breathing. I think she's, oh God, please hurry." His words tumbled over each other, panic rising with every syllable. The operator tried to calm him, but his sobs only grew louder. More frantic, as he pleaded for someone, anyone, to save her. Within minutes, the hotel lobby was awash in blue and red lights. Parisian police officers rushed past stunned guests, their radios buzzing with urgent instructions. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, but the tension inside was anything but gentle. Officers moved quickly, their footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. Their faces set in grim determination. In the suite, the scene was almost surreal. The bride, still in her wedding dress, lay motionless on the bed. Her dark hair fanned out across the white sheets, a stark contrast to the crimson stain spreading beneath her. The husband knelt beside her, his hands shaking, his face streaked with tears. He kept whispering her name, as if saying it enough times might bring her back. The room was silent, except for his ragged breathing and the distant wail of sirens. Outside, the city sparkled on, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding within these walls. But inside, time seemed to stop. Officers exchanged glances, their eyes wide with shock. No one spoke. No one dared to move. And as the first flash of a camera lit up the room, capturing the horror forever, no one could have imagined what secrets were about to be uncovered. Because what the police would discover next would shock everyone. Before the tragedy, before the headlines and the heartbreak, there was just a love story. It began in the most ordinary way, as so many do, to strangers, a chance encounter. And a spark that neither of them could ignore. Her name was Priya, she was 28. With a laugh that could light up a room, and eyes that always seemed to be searching for something more. She'd grown up in Mumbai, surrounded by the chaos and color of the city. But her dreams had always stretched far beyond its crowded streets. He was Arjun. 34, quiet and thoughtful, with a gentle smile and a steady presence that drew people in. He'd built a life for himself in London, working long hours as a financial analyst, but he never complained. He was the kind of man who remembered birthdays, who sent flowers just because, who listened more than he spoke. When he met Priya at a friend's wedding in Goa, he was instantly captivated, not just by her beauty, but by her spirit. She was fearless, adventurous, and endlessly curious about the world. Their first conversation lasted hours. They talked about everything: family, food, travel, the books they loved, the places they wanted to see. Priya confessed her dream of visiting Paris, of standing beneath the Eiffel Tower and feeling, just for a moment, like anything was possible. Arjun listened, smiling, already imagining how he might make that dream come true. After that night, they were inseparable. Long-distance calls turned into weekend getaways, and soon, Arjun was flying to Mumbai every chance he got. Priya's friends teased her about the whirlwind romance, but she just laughed, her cheeks flushed with happiness. She told them she'd never felt so seen, so understood. Arjun, for his part, found himself opening up in ways he never had before. He told Priya things he'd never told anyone, about his childhood, his fears, his hopes for the future. Within 6 months, he proposed. It was simple, just the two of them on a quiet beach, at sunset, but for Priya, it was perfect. She said yes, without hesitation, her heart full of hope and excitement. They began planning their wedding almost immediately. dreaming up a celebration that would blend their cultures and families. A day that would honor both their pasts and their future together. Paris was Priya's idea. She wanted something magical, something unforgettable. She imagined herself in a white dress, walking hand in hand with Arjun along the Seine, the city lights reflecting in the water. Arjun agreed, eager to give her the fairy tale she'd always wanted. He threw himself into the planning, booking the finest hotel, arranging for a ceremony in a centuries-old chapel, making sure every detail was just right. But beneath the excitement, there were moments, small, fleeting, but impossible to ignore, when unease crept in. Priya's parents seemed distant, their smiles a little too forced. Arjun noticed the way Priya sometimes hesitated before answering questions about her past, the way she changed the subject when certain topics came up. He told himself it was just nerves, the stress of planning a wedding, the pressure of blending two families from different worlds. Still, the doubts lingered, quiet and persistent. Arjun pushed them aside, choosing instead to focus on the future. The life they would build together, the adventures they would share. He loved Priya, and he believed in their story. He wanted to be the man who made her dreams come true. As the wedding day approached, the excitement grew. Friends and family flew in from around the world, filling the hotel with laughter and anticipation. Priya glowed with happiness, her eyes shining as she tried on her dress, as she practiced her vows in front of the mirror. Arjun watched her, his heart full, determined to protect her, to cherish her, to give her the world. But even as they celebrated, as they toasted to love and new beginnings, neither of them could have imagined how quickly everything would unravel. Because sometimes, even the brightest dreams can cast the darkest shadows. And in Paris, on the night that was supposed to mark the start of their forever, those shadows were waiting. The wedding was everything Priya had ever dreamed of, maybe even more. The hotel's grand ballroom was transformed into a shimmering wonderland, with crystal chandeliers casting soft light over tables draped in gold and ivory. Roses and jasmine filled the air with their sweet scent, mingling with the faint aroma of incense that drifted from a small altar in the corner. Waiters in crisp uniforms moved gracefully between guests, offering glasses of champagne and delicate canapes. Laughter and music spilled out into the marble hallways. Echoing up the grand staircase, Priya looked radiant in her wedding dress. A delicate blend of Western elegance and Indian tradition. The white silk was embroidered with gold thread, and a sheer dupatta, edged in tiny pearls, framed her face. Her mother had insisted on the traditional red bangles, and Priya wore them proudly, their soft clinking, a reminder of home. Arjun, in a tailored navy suit, with a subtle gold pocket square, couldn't take his eyes off her. When he reached for her hand, she squeezed his fingers, her smile trembling with emotion. The ceremony itself was a beautiful fusion of cultures. A priest recited Sanskrit blessings as Arjun's parents looked on, their faces a mix of pride and awe. Priya's father, usually so reserved, wiped away a tear as he placed a garland around his daughter's neck. Friends from London and Mumbai snapped photos, their voices rising in a chorus of congratulations. For a moment, it felt as if nothing could touch them. No distance, no difference, no doubt. But beneath the surface, small cracks began to show. Priya's mother, graceful and poised, kept glancing at her phone, her brow furrowed in worry. Arjun's older brother, Raj, seemed distracted. His laughter a little too loud, his eyes darting around the room, as if searching for someone. During the family photos, Priya's cousin whispered something in her ear, and Priya's smile faltered, just for a second. Arjun noticed, but when he asked if she was all right, she brushed him off with a quick kiss on the cheek. At the reception, the mood was jubilant. Guests danced to a mix of Bollywood hits and French jazz, their saris and tuxedos swirling together in a blur of color and light. Priya's best friend, Meera, gave a heartfelt toast, recalling late-night talks and childhood secrets. Arjun's father spoke of family honor and new beginnings, his voice steady but his eyes lingering on Priya a moment too long. There was laughter, applause, the clinking of glasses, but also, in the quieter corners, hushed conversations and sidelong glances. As the night wore on, the champagne flowed, and the music grew louder. Priya slipped away for a moment of quiet, standing alone on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. Mira found her there, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You look happy," Mira said softly. Priya nodded, but her eyes were distant, her smile fading as she stared out at the Paris skyline. "I am," she whispered, almost as if she was trying to convince herself. Inside, Arjun was cornered by his uncle, who pressed him about the future, where they would live, when they would start a family. Arjun answered politely, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying the strange tension he'd sensed during the ceremony. He caught sight of Priya on the balcony, her silhouette framed by the city's golden glow, and felt a pang of worry he couldn't quite explain. The night ended with a shower of rose petals and cheers as the couple made their way to the elevator. Hands entwined, faces flushed with excitement and exhaustion. Guests waved and called out blessings, their voices echoing down the hallway. But as the doors slid shut, sealing them off from the world, a heavy silence settled between them, a silence filled with unspoken questions, hidden fears, and secrets that refused to stay buried. And somewhere, in the shadows of that glittering ballroom, the first threads of tragedy were quietly unraveling. The elevator ride to their suite felt like a dream. Priya leaned into Arjun, her head resting on his shoulder, the weight of the day finally settling in. He squeezed her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. They didn't speak, but the silence between them was warm, filled with the promise of a new beginning. When the doors opened, Arjun scooped her up, laughing as she protested, and carried her across the threshold of Suite 714, inside. The room was softly lit, rose petals scattered across the bed, a bottle of champagne chilling on the table. The city sparkled beyond the windows, the Eiffel Tower glowing in the distance. Priya slipped off her shoes and spun around, her dress swirling, her laughter echoing off the walls. Arjun watched her, his heart full, thinking how lucky he was to have found her. They toasted with champagne, their glasses clinking as they made quiet promises for the future. Priya talked about the places she wanted to visit, the adventures they would share. Arjun listened, smiling, imagining a lifetime of nights just like this one. He reached for her, pulling her close, and for a while, the world outside faded away. But as the night wore on, something shifted. Priya grew quiet, her gaze drifting to the window. Arjun asked if she was tired, but she shook her head, forcing a smile. She excused herself to the bathroom, closing the door a little too firmly behind her. Arjun waited, listening to the sound of running water, the muffled clink of bangles, as she washed her hands. Minutes passed. He called her name, his voice gentle, but she didn't answer. When she finally emerged, her eyes were red, her smile brittle. She sat on the edge of the bed, twisting her ring, her hands trembling. Arjun knelt in front of her, searching her face for answers. "Priya, what's wrong?" he whispered. She shook her head, looking away, her silence heavy with things unsaid. He tried to comfort her, wrapping his arms around her, but she pulled back, her body tense. "I just need a minute," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Arjun nodded, unsure, a knot of worry tightening in his chest. He watched as she stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights, her reflection ghostly in the glass. The room felt colder now, the magic of the evening slipping away. Arjun sat on the bed, waiting, his mind racing with questions he was afraid to ask. He thought about the strange looks from her family, the whispered conversations, the way she'd seemed to drift in and out of the celebration. He wanted to believe it was just nerves, exhaustion, the overwhelming rush of the day, but then, in the quiet of that Parisian night, something happened. A sound, a sharp, sudden gasp, cut through the silence. Arjun turned, his heart pounding, and saw Priya collapse to the floor. Her body crumpling like a marionette with its strings cut. For a split second, the world stood still. And in that moment, everything changed. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Arjun rushed to Priya's side. He dropped to his knees, his hands shaking as he tried to lift her, to wake her, to do anything that might undo what had just happened. Priya, please. His voice cracked, raw with panic. Her eyes were closed, her lips parted as if she were about to speak, but no sound came. He pressed his ear to her chest, desperate for a heartbeat, a breath, any sign of life. But there was nothing, just a terrible, suffocating silence. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers numb, and dialed emergency services. The words tumbled out, in a frantic rush, his name, the hotel, the room number, the plea for help. The operator's voice was calm, almost detached, as she asked questions he could barely process. Is she breathing? Is there a pulse? Arjun's mind raced. He tried to remember what he'd learned about CPR, but his hands wouldn't cooperate. He pressed on her chest, counting out loud, tears streaming down his face. Come on, Priya, come back. Please, come back. The minutes stretched on, each one heavier than the last. When the paramedics finally arrived, they moved with practiced efficiency. Checking Priya's vitals, asking Arjun to step aside. He stumbled back, his body numb, watching as they worked over her, their faces grim. One of them shook his head, and the other gently covered Priya's face with a white sheet. The finality of it hit Arjun like a physical blow. He sank to the floor, his head in his hands. Sobs racking his body. The hotel suite, once filled with laughter and light, was now a crime scene. Police officers arrived, their voices low and serious, as they began their investigation. They asked Arjun to sit on the couch, to recount everything that had happened. His answers came in fits and starts, his mind foggy with shock. He told them about the wedding, the celebration, the quiet moments in the suite. He tried to remember every detail, every word. But it all blurred together in a haze of grief. As the officers moved through the room, their eyes missed nothing. They photographed the bed, the champagne glasses, the scattered rose petals. They collected Priya's jewelry, her phone, the half-empty bottle of perfume on the dresser. One officer knelt beside Arjun, his tone gentle but probing. Did your wife have any health problems? Was she upset about anything tonight? Arjun shook his head, his voice barely audible. No, she was happy. We were happy, but even as he spoke, he could feel the shift in the room. The questions grew sharper, more pointed. Did you argue? Did anyone visit your room? Arjun's grief twisted into confusion, then fear. He realized, with a sickening jolt, that he was no longer just a husband in mourning. He was a person of interest. Outside the suite, the hallway buzzed with activity. Hotel staff whispered to each other, their eyes wide with shock. Guests craned their necks, trying to catch a glimpse of the tragedy unfolding behind the police tape. The city outside continued on, oblivious, but inside those walls, everything had changed. As the night wore on, Arjun was taken to the police station for further questioning. He sat in a cold, sterile room, replaying the night over and over in his mind. Every moment, every word, every look from Priya. Was there something he'd missed? Something he should have seen? The officers asked about their relationship, about Priya's family, about any enemy she might have had. Arjun answered as best he could, but doubt gnawed at him. Had he failed her? Had he missed the signs? Back at the hotel, investigators combed through the suite, searching for anything that might explain what had happened. They found Priya's phone, its screen lit up with unread messages. They found a torn piece of paper in the trash, a name scrawled in hurried handwriting. They found a single earring beneath the bed, its mate still in Priya's ear. Each clue raised more questions than answers. As dawn crept over the Paris skyline, the first wave of suspicion settled in. Was this a tragic accident, or something far more sinister? Was Arjun a grieving husband, or a man with something to hide? The line between love and betrayal blurred, casting a long shadow over everything that had come before. And as the city woke to the news of a bride's death on her wedding night, no one could have guessed just how deep the secrets ran, or how many lives would be changed by what the police were about to uncover next. The morning after Priya's death, the Paris police wasted no time. The case was already making headlines. An Indian bride found dead on her wedding night in one of the city's most exclusive hotels. The pressure was on, and every detail mattered. Detective Moreau, a seasoned investigator with sharp eyes and a reputation for never missing a clue, took the lead. He started with the basics: who were Priya and Arjun, and what had really happened behind the closed doors of Suite 714. The first step was to dig into their backgrounds. Arjun's story seemed straightforward. He was a British citizen, a financial analyst with a clean record, no history of violence, no debts, no enemies. His friends and colleagues described him as reliable, gentle, and deeply in love with Priya. But as the detectives turned their attention to Priya, things quickly became less clear. Priya's passport showed she'd traveled extensively in the past 2 years. London, Dubai, Singapore, and now Paris. Her social media was a carefully curated collection of travel photos, smiling selfies, and loving captions about Arjun. But when police checked her phone records, they found a series of late-night calls to an unknown number in India, just days before the wedding. The calls were short, sometimes only a minute or two, but they happened every night, always after midnight. When Detective Moreau tried the number, it was disconnected. There were other oddities, too. Priya's bank account showed several large withdrawals in the weeks leading up to the wedding. Amounts that didn't match any of the known wedding expenses. When police asked Arjun about them, he looked genuinely confused. "She handled most of the planning," he said quietly. "I trusted her with everything." But the numbers didn't add up, and the more the detectives looked, the more questions they found. The guest list for the wedding was another puzzle. Most of the names were familiar: family, close friends, colleagues from London and Mumbai. But a few stood out. There was a man named Samir, listed as a family friend, who had checked into the hotel but never attended the ceremony. When police tried to contact him, they discovered he'd checked out early that morning, leaving no forwarding address. Another guest, a woman named Anjali, had arrived alone and spent most of the evening on her phone, barely speaking to anyone. When questioned, she claimed to be an old-school friend of Priya's. But none of Priya's other friends remembered her. Detective Moreau began to suspect that Priya's life was more complicated than anyone realized. He interviewed Priya's parents, who seemed nervous and evasive. Her mother insisted that Priya was happy, that she had no enemies. But her eyes darted away whenever the conversation turned to Priya's past. Her father, usually stoic, grew agitated when asked about Priya's travels. "She was independent," he said, his voice tight. "She made her own choices." Meanwhile, Arjun was struggling to process his grief and the growing suspicion around him. He replayed every moment of the wedding, every conversation, searching for something he might have missed. He remembered the way Priya had seemed distracted during the reception, the whispered conversation with her cousin, the way she'd clung to her phone during dinner. He wondered if she'd been hiding something from him, something she was too afraid to share. The detectives pressed on, combing through emails, text messages, and social media posts. They found a string of messages from an account with no profile picture. urging Priya to tell the truth and warning her that secrets never stay buried. The messages stopped abruptly 2 days before the wedding. When police traced the account, it led to an internet cafe in Mumbai. Another dead end, as the investigation deepened. The picture of Priya that emerged was not the one Arjun or her family had known. She was loving, yes, and adventurous, but also secretive, fiercely independent. And perhaps running from something, or someone. The detectives began to wonder if Priya's death was truly a tragic accident, or if it was the final act in a much larger, darker story. And just as Detective Moreau was starting to piece together the puzzle, a new lead arrived, a package addressed to Priya. Delivered to the hotel, the morning after her death. Inside was a single photograph, old and faded, showing Priya with a man no one recognized. On the back, a message was scrawled in hurried handwriting. "You can't escape the past." The investigation was only just beginning, and already the secrets were piling up. But the bride's past was about to come crashing into the present. As the days passed, the investigation into Priya's death took a sharp, unexpected turn. The more the police uncovered, the more it became clear that the woman Arjun had married was not the woman he thought he knew. The secrets began to spill out, one after another, each more unsettling than the last. Detective Moreau started with the photograph found in the mysterious package. He showed it to Priya's parents first. Her mother's hands trembled as she turned it over, her eyes filling with tears. Her father's face hardened, his jaw clenched tight. "We don't know this man," he insisted, but the lie was obvious. When pressed, Priya's mother finally broke down. "He was from her past," she whispered. "A mistake. We thought it was over." The man in the photograph was Vikram, a name that had once been whispered in Priya's family, with a mixture of fear and regret. Years ago, before she met Arjun, Priya had been engaged to Vikram, the son of a powerful businessman in Mumbai. The match had been arranged by her parents, who saw it as a way to secure their family's future. But Vikram was not the man he appeared to be. He was controlling, jealous, and quick to anger. Priya's friends remembered the bruises she tried to hide, the way she withdrew from them. The spark in her eyes, dimming with each passing month. Meera, Priya's best friend since childhood, sat with Detective Moreau in a quiet cafe. Her voice shaking as she recounted those dark days. She was so full of life before Vikram. After she got engaged, it was like she disappeared. She stopped coming out with us, stopped laughing. I tried to talk to her, but she always said she was fine. I knew she wasn't. Eventually, Priya found the courage to break off the engagement, despite her parents' protests and Vikram's threats. It was a scandal in their community, and her family paid a heavy price. Lost business, whispered gossip, and a lingering sense of shame. Priya left Mumbai soon after, determined to start over. She traveled, worked odd jobs, and slowly rebuilt her life. But the past, it seemed, was never far behind. Detective Moreau tracked down Vikram, who now lived in Dubai. When questioned, he denied any involvement in Priya's death, but his bitterness was obvious. "She humiliated me," he spat. "She ruined my reputation. But I moved on. I have nothing to do with her anymore." Still, the detectives couldn't ignore the threatening messages Priya had received in the weeks before her wedding. Messages traced back to a burner phone. Purchased in Dubai. The investigation also uncovered deep rifts within Priya's own family. Her parents had never truly forgiven her for breaking off the engagement. Her father, proud and traditional, saw it as a stain on their honor. Her mother, torn between love for her daughter and loyalty to her husband, tried to keep the peace, but often failed. Priya's younger brother Rohan was the only one who stood by her. In a tearful interview, he described the tension at home. "She was always the black sheep, always fighting for her own path. I admired her, but it made things hard for all of us." Arjun, meanwhile, was reeling from the revelations. He sat in the police station, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, as Detective Moreau laid out what they'd found. "Did you know about Vikram?" the detective asked gently. Arjun shook his head, his eyes wide with disbelief. "She never told me. I thought I knew everything about her." The pain in his voice was unmistakable, a mixture of grief, betrayal, and helplessness. The detectives also spoke to Anjali, the mysterious guest from the wedding. She revealed that she and Priya had met in Singapore, where Priya had worked for a year after leaving Mumbai. She was always looking over her shoulder, Anjali recalled. "She never said why, but I could tell she was scared. She changed her phone number 3 times in 6 months. She told me once that she wished she could just disappear." Piece by piece, the portrait of Priya grew more complex. She was brave, determined, and fiercely independent. But she was also haunted by her past, by her family's expectations, by the fear that she could never truly escape. The police began to wonder if someone from that past had finally caught up with her in Paris. The final piece of the puzzle came from Priya's old emails, recovered from a forgotten account. In one sent, just days before the wedding, she wrote to Meera, "I'm happy, but I'm scared. I keep thinking something bad is going to happen. I wish I could tell Arjun everything, but I don't want to ruin this for him. He deserves better than my baggage." The words hit Arjun like a punch to the gut. He realized, too late, that the woman he loved had been carrying a burden he never saw. The grief was overwhelming, but so was the guilt. If only he'd asked more questions, if only he'd pushed her to open up. Maybe things would have been different. But the past cannot be changed. And as the police pieced together the fragments of Priya's hidden life, it became clear that her story was far from over. Because someone, somewhere, still had unfinished business with her. And the truth about what happened in Suite 714 was about to come to light. In the days following Priya's death, Arjun's world shrank to the size of a police interrogation room. The walls felt closer every hour, the air heavier with suspicion. He sat across from Detective Moreau, his hands trembling, his mind replaying every moment of that night. The questions came in waves, some gentle, some sharp, all circling the same unspoken accusation. Did you do it? Did you know? Outside, the story had already exploded. News vans lined the street in front of the hotel, their satellite dishes pointed skyward. Headlines screamed from every screen. Indian bride dies in Paris. Husband questioned. Photos of Arjun and Priya, smiling and radiant on their wedding day, flashed across the news. Now paired with words like mystery, murder, and betrayal. The world wanted answers. And Arjun was the only one left to give them. He tried to explain, to tell the detectives about Priya's laughter, her dreams, the way she'd looked at him that night. But every detail seemed to twist in the retelling. Why had she been so quiet? Why did she cry in the bathroom? Why did she collapse so suddenly? The more he tried to remember, the more his memories blurred, colored by guilt and fear. He wondered if he'd missed something, some sign, some plea for help. He wondered if, deep down, he was to blame. The police searched their suite again, combing through every drawer, every suitcase. They took his clothes, his phone, his laptop. They asked about his finances, his relationship with Priya's family, his whereabouts at every hour of the night. Arjun answered, as best he could, but the doubt in their eyes never faded. He could feel the narrative shifting, the love story unraveling. He was no longer the grieving husband, he was the prime suspect. The media frenzy only made things worse. Reporters hounded his friends and family, digging for any scrap of scandal. Old photos of Arjun with ex-girlfriends surfaced online, fueling wild speculation. Anonymous sources claimed he and Priya had argued at the reception. A hotel staff member told a tabloid that Arjun had seemed agitated that night. Every rumor, Every half-truth became another stone in the wall, closing in around him. Arjun's parents flew in from London, their faces drawn and anxious. His mother clung to him, insisting on his innocence, while his father spoke quietly with the family lawyer. They tried to shield him from the cameras, but the damage was done. Friends who had once called to offer condolences now hesitated, unsure what to believe. Even Priya's family, shattered by grief, began to pull away. Her father refused to speak to Arjun. Her mother's eyes filled with accusation and heartbreak. Alone, in his hotel room, Arjun scrolled through messages from strangers. Some offering support, most filled with anger and suspicion. He read them all, unable to look away. He thought about Priya, about the secrets she'd kept, about the life they'd planned together. He wondered if he'd ever really known her at all. The pain was sharp, but the loneliness was worse. He remembered the last words she'd said to him, the way she'd looked at him before everything fell apart. He replayed their private struggles, the arguments about her family, the nights she'd stayed up late, texting someone she wouldn't name, the way she sometimes seemed to drift away, even when she was right beside him. He'd told himself it was just wedding stress, that love would be enough to fix it all. Now, he wasn't so sure. The world saw a villain, or a victim, but inside, Arjun was just a man lost in grief and confusion. He wanted to scream, to beg someone to believe him, to turn back time and save Priya from whatever haunted her. But the truth was out of his hands now. Tangled in secrets and suspicion, and as the investigation pressed on, Arjun realized that trust, once so easy, so certain, had been shattered. Not just between him and Priya, but between him and the world. The only thing left was the hope that the real story would come out, and that somewhere, somehow, the truth would set him free, as the Paris police struggled to untangle the web of secrets surrounding Priya's death. The investigation took on a new urgency and a new direction. Detective Moreau realized that the answers they needed might not be found in Paris at all, but thousands of miles away, in the crowded streets and hidden corners of Mumbai. With the cooperation of Indian authorities, the case quickly became an international effort. With detectives on both continents racing against time, the first step was to follow the money. Priya's unexplained bank withdrawals had raised red flags, and now, with access to her financial records in India, investigators discovered a series of wire transfers to accounts under different names. Some of the money had ended up in Dubai, some in Singapore, and some had simply vanished. The pattern suggested blackmail or extortion. Someone had been pressuring Priya, and she'd been paying to keep them quiet. Detectives in Mumbai began interviewing Priya's old friends, colleagues, and neighbors. They learned about her broken engagement to Vikram and the scandal that had followed. But they also uncovered something new. After leaving Mumbai, Priya had worked for a short time at a travel agency, where she'd become close to a woman named Kavita. Kavita, it turned out, had disappeared 6 months earlier, leaving behind a trail of debts and angry clients. When police tracked down her family, they found a single clue, a postcard from Paris, sent just days before Priya's wedding, with no return address and only 2 words, "I'm sorry." Meanwhile, the mysterious guest Samir, who had checked into the hotel but never attended the wedding, was finally located in Goa. When questioned, he admitted to knowing Priya from her days in Singapore. He claimed she had confided in him about being threatened, but he refused to say more. His evasiveness only deepened the mystery. Was he protecting someone, or was he involved himself? Back in Paris, Arjun was kept informed of the investigation's progress, but the distance only made his anxiety worse. He felt helpless, trapped in a city that now felt cold and foreign. The French police pressed him for more details about Priya's life in India. But he could only offer fragments, stories she'd told him, names he barely remembered. He wondered if he'd ever truly known the woman he'd married. or if she'd always been running from something he couldn't see. The Indian police also uncovered a series of threatening emails sent to Priya in the weeks before her wedding. The messages were traced to an internet cafe in Mumbai, but the sender had used fake identification. The content was chilling. "You can't hide forever. I know where you are." The emails referenced secrets from her past, debts unpaid, and promises broken. It was clear that someone had been watching Priya, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the investigation deepened, a new theory emerged. What if Priya's death wasn't about love or jealousy, but about something much bigger? Money, revenge, or even organized crime. The detectives began to look at her connections in Dubai and Singapore, searching for links to criminal networks. They found evidence that Priya had been approached by a man involved in a money laundering scheme. But she had refused to participate. Had she made an enemy powerful enough to follow her all the way to Paris? The trail of deception seemed endless, stretching across continents and involving people from every chapter of Priya's life. Each new lead brought more questions, more suspects, and more heartbreak for Arjun and Priya's family. The truth felt just out of reach, hidden behind layers of lies and fear. But then, just as the investigation threatened to stall, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A hotel security camera, previously overlooked, captured a shadowy figure slipping into the hallway outside Suite 714, just minutes before Priya's collapse. The figure's face was obscured, but the posture, the walk. There was something eerily familiar. Detective Moro's heart pounded as he replayed the footage, realizing that the answer might have been right in front of them all along. The real killer, it seemed, was closer than anyone realized. The tension in the police station was electric as Detective Moro gathered everyone in the small, windowless room. Arjun sat at the table, his hands clenched, his eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Priya's parents were there too, their faces drawn and pale, bracing themselves for answers they weren't sure they wanted. The air was thick with anticipation and dread. Detective Moreau began with the footage. He played the grainy video on a laptop, the room silent except for the faint hum of the screen. The shadowy figure moved down the hallway, pausing outside Suite 714. The figure's face was hidden, but the way they moved, the slight limp, the nervous glance over the shoulder, was unmistakable to one person in the room. Priya's mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Rohan," she whispered, her voice trembling. Arjun's head snapped up, confusion and disbelief warring on his face. "Her brother?" he asked, barely able to process the thought. Detective Moreau nodded grimly. "We matched the figure's build and gait to Rohan. He arrived in Paris the day before the wedding, but never checked in with the family. We found his fingerprints on the doorknob to your suite, Arjun, and we traced the threatening emails and phone calls to a burner phone purchased with his ID." The room erupted in chaos. Priya's father shouted in denial, while her mother sobbed, her body shaking. Arjun felt the world tilt beneath him, the truth crashing down like a wave. He managed to choke out, his voice raw. Moro's voice was gentle but firm. "Rohan was deeply protective of Priya. After the scandal with Vikram, he blamed your family for not supporting her. But when he learned about the money Priya was sending to cover his gambling debts, he panicked. He thought she was in danger, that someone from her past would hurt her, or that she'd ruin herself trying to save him. He confronted her that night, desperate to make her stop. In the heat of the argument, he pushed her. She fell, hit her head on the corner of the table. It was quick. He panicked, staged the scene, and fled. The truth was devastating. Arjun's grief twisted into something sharper. A mix of anger, sorrow, and bitter understanding. He remembered Priya's fear, her secrecy, the way she'd tried to protect everyone but herself. He realized, too late, that love sometimes means seeing the pain someone hides. even when they're trying to shield you from it. Priya's parents clung to each other, shattered by the revelation. The family's secrets, the debts, the shame, they had all come together in one tragic, irreversible moment. Arjun sat in stunned silence, the weight of the truth pressing down on him. As Detective Moreau closed the file, the room fell quiet. The truth had finally come to light, but it brought no comfort, only the cold, hard reality of what had been lost. And as Arjun stared at the empty chair where Priya should have been, he knew nothing would ever be the same. In the days that followed the confession, the world seemed to move in slow motion. Arjun wandered the empty hotel suite, haunted by memories of laughter and love, now replaced by a silence that felt endless. He replayed every moment with Priya, searching for signs he'd missed, words left unsaid. The grief was sharp, but the guilt was sharper. He wondered if he could have saved her, if he'd only asked the right questions, or seen through her brave smile. Priya's family was shattered. Her mother withdrew into herself, barely speaking, her eyes red and distant. Her father, once so proud, now looked years older, his shoulders stooped under the weight of regret. The family's secrets had been dragged into the light, and nothing could ever return to the way it was. Rohan, arrested and awaiting trial, sat alone in a Parisian cell, his face blank, his spirit broken. He refused visitors, unable to face the family he'd tried so desperately to protect. The legal process moved swiftly. The evidence was overwhelming: fingerprints, emails, the security footage. Rohan confessed, his voice flat and empty, to causing Priya's death. The court proceedings were somber, the judge's words echoing in the hushed chamber. There was no sense of victory, only a deep, aching loss that touched everyone in the room. For Arjun, the pain was a constant companion. He struggled to sleep, haunted by dreams of Priya's laughter and the life they'd never have. He tried to forgive, to understand, but the wounds were too fresh. The world outside moved on, but for those left behind, time seemed to stand still. In the end, justice was served, but it brought little comfort. The scars ran deep, and the questions lingered, about love, about family, about the secrets we keep and the price we pay for them. And as Arjun stood alone beneath the Paris sky, he realized that some losses never truly heal. The trial drew international attention, with reporters crowding the courthouse steps and headlines dissecting every detail. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy, each testimony a painful reminder of what had been lost. Rohan sat quietly, his eyes fixed on the floor, never once looking at his parents or Arjun. The prosecution laid out the evidence: his presence at the hotel, the threatening messages, the tragic confrontation. The defense spoke of his love for Priya, his desperation, and the crushing weight of family secrets. The verdict came swiftly: guilty of involuntary manslaughter. The judge's words were measured, acknowledging Rohan's remorse and the tragic circumstances, but also the irreversible harm he'd caused. He was sentenced to several years in prison, with the possibility of early release for good behavior. For Priya's family, it was a hollow victory. Justice, in the legal sense, had been served, but the wounds left behind were far deeper than any sentence could heal. The case sparked conversations in both France and India about the hidden pressures within families, the dangers of secrecy, and the need for better support for those facing blackmail or abuse. Some called for reforms, more resources for victims, better mental health support, and stronger international cooperation in cases of cross-border crime. But for those closest to Priya, the questions lingered. Could any of this have been prevented? Had the warning signs been missed, or simply ignored? Arjun, still grappling with his grief, found little comfort in the outcome. He wondered if he'd ever truly understand the choices Priya and her brother had made. The world moved on, but the story left a mark. A cautionary tale about love, trust, and the shadows that can grow in silence. And as the final gavel fell, one truth remained. Some answers would never come, and some hearts would never fully mend. In the months and years that followed, the story of Priya's wedding night tragedy became more than just a headline. It became a cautionary tale whispered in families, discussed in support groups, and shared among friends. For Arjun, the pain never fully faded, but he found a way to honor Priya's memory by speaking openly about what happened. He wanted others to learn from their heartbreak, to see the warning signs he'd missed, and to understand that love, while powerful, cannot erase the shadows of the past. Priya's family, too, began to heal, slowly and painfully. Her mother started volunteering with organizations that support women facing abuse and blackmail, determined to help others find the courage to speak out. Her father, once so concerned with appearances, learned to value honesty over reputation. Even Rohan, from his prison cell, wrote letters to his parents, expressing regret and urging them to break the cycle of silence that had haunted their family for generations. The case left a lasting mark on the communities it touched. It sparked conversations about the hidden pressures in international relationships, the cultural expectations, the fear of shame, the weight of secrets carried across borders. Experts urged couples to talk openly about their pasts, to seek help when something feels wrong, and to trust their instincts when red flags appear. No relationship, no matter how loving, should be built on secrets or fear. For viewers, Priya's story is a reminder that it's okay to ask questions, to listen to your intuition, and to reach out for support when you feel alone. If you or someone you know is facing threats, blackmail, or family pressure, there are resources and people who can help. You are not alone, and you do not have to carry the burden in silence. In the end, Priya's life was more than her tragedy. She was brave, loving, and determined to find happiness, even in the face of fear. Her story is a call to action, for honesty, for compassion, and for the courage to confront the shadows before they grow too dark. Let her memory inspire us all to look out for one another, to speak up when something feels wrong, and to believe that healing is possible, even after the deepest loss. If you or someone you love needs help, don't wait. Reach out. Share your story. And remember, hope can begin with a single conversation.